The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS-HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont from our nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. Today's Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Kīlauea has had another eruptive episode, number 25 of its ongoing summit eruption, so that'll be much of our focus today. How have you been, Dane? How's your last week been?
Doing good, yeah. Just been busy. We had some fun down at Pohiki that we'll talk about, but we also, building up to episode 25 and the start of it, and high fountains again, and all that. So yeah, been busy, but been an interesting week so far. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great to be down at Pohiki. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but the dredging has started down there. This is essentially what we're talking about. We had a blessing ceremony and then some actions happening down there for the first time in a long time. So we'll discuss that, and we're going to update you guys with all the latest statistics and all of that as well. Yeah, it's been kind of busy. I will say that I will be taking a leave from the broadcast starting next week for a few weeks. So we'll be throwing in a few extra things, bonuses this week to make sure we're all caught up before that happens, and you guys can have your fun over the next couple of weeks, Blue and Dane.
Yep. We have some, just as a teaser, plans to return for our third iteration of producing crazy stuff with AI generated images. So look forward to that.
Yeah, and Kīlauea just doesn't seem to stop, so there'll be more of that as well. And just one final note for our intro here, just to welcome back our ASL interpreters, Daniel and Carrie. Great to have you guys back. All right, so let's switch our screens around here and get ready for our summary. Hello, everybody. This is our Hawaiian Volcano summary for June 12th, 2025. Another week has passed on Kilauea's summit eruption, producing another episode. This the 25th episode of fountaining in 25 weeks. We had precursor activity beginning on Tuesday with the first overflows just before 6 a.m., followed by 5 to 10 minute or 5 to 10 gas pistoning cycles every hour that was cause lava to spatter, rise, glow an event, and then drop back down again. So beginning on Wednesday, just before noon, we saw the continuous output of lava from the vents, from the north vent to start, and eventually the south vent joined in. But from about around 12:30 p.m. to 1 o'clock, we saw those fountains grow in height massively to exceed 1,000 feet or 305 meters, with a final maximum fountain heights yet to be reported. The south vent produced smaller fountains, as you can see here in this time lapse from the V3, V2, and V1 cameras that catches the 8 hours of fountaining before everything ends just after 8 p.m. So let's show you guys a few other views here. This is the B1 camera looking at the eruption from the east. And what you see here, this camera cuts off partway through the eruption, but you see the beginning of the flow reaching across a caldera floor, hugging the southern wall right over here. And when we flip to the before and after pictures, we can see that the lava flow reached as far as the eastern tip of the caldera floor, the inner crater floor. So a large flow reportedly produced 5.3 million cubic meters of lava in those 8 hours and reached this 1 1/3 miles across the crater floor. Here are eruption statistics from the USGS, reporting the volumes, times, and duration of fountaining. And we have a new map also released that does not update the volume, but does tell us we have a maximum thickness of 220 feet, or 67 meters, over an extent of 841 acres, or 340 hectares. In case you're wondering, that makes the average thickness across the entire crater floor somewhere in the order of 30 meters, or 100 feet. So it's a lot thicker on the western end and slopes down towards the east. The vents are in the southwest of the caldera, and some of the tephra is falling outside of the crater here in this closed area of the national park. Otherwise, all the impact of lava is contained within this inner pit and does not threaten any people or any of the viewing areas. If we look at the monitoring data, this is the ground tilt at Kīlauea Summit in blue, and on a rift zone in green. The rift zone has been quietly deflating with no effect from the current eruption, but we can see the buildup to our most recent episode 25 here through increasing ground tilt, and then a big deflationary pulse comes as the pressure is relieved during those 8 hours of eruption. You can see we've had the resumption of increasing ground tilt since the end of episode 25. And so we expect another episode to come, although it's not clear yet whether we'll have a higher recovery rate like we had within the last week, leading to just a 6-day pause. So where we had an extended 9 or 10-day pause.
Looks like your camera there froze, Phil. You're right. You there? All right. Well, what we got going on is we're just looking at the tilt plot here, and you see the episodic sawtooth pattern still looking more or less in equilibrium, maybe a slight hint of inflation, but overall just continuing this pattern. And we see that rebound from the tilt immediately after this last episode, which indicates the next episode is, or episode 26 is already starting the process. So I'll be looking at a week or so, but yeah, it looks like we have lost Phil. Lou, I'm going to go ahead and bring you in here. Hey, Lou.
How you doing?
Well, do we want to just throw something different in? Well, I mean, we're going to have to get Phil back in here to do the summary at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. With that tilt up there, I wanted to throw in, because it's pretty amazing that over every episode, last night after the eruption, the episode concluded, the tilt was right back up again. I mean, no hesitation, no, we'll check in the morning. It's a couple refreshes on the screen and we're going right back up. So I think you're right on the money there on, here we are on another 5 to 7 day outlook. We'll find out with data incoming probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd be looking at more near 7, but yeah, in that range, right? So why don't we go ahead and bring something forward that we were gonna save?
Let's go. Want to go Pohiki or Rockfall?
Let's do Rockfall.
Let's go Rockfall. All right, there we go. So
in the previous episode 24, the more astute viewers were able to find these little rock falls that kept happening, and we got a lot of questions about those rock falls. Mainly, people were thinking that the eruption site is trying to move, that it was trying to migrate up the caldera wall. Now, we didn't think so, or at least I didn't. And what it seems like is happening is, yeah, you can go ahead and start playing it here, Lou. It seems like what's happening is that all this material that's getting thrown up there from these huge fountains gets stuck to the wall and eventually accumulates. And when it accumulates, it insulates itself, and then it continues to accumulate to the point where it then breaks off of the wall, falls down, and now that hot inside is revealed. So what do you got, Lou?
Yeah, 100% on that. First look, the first one that happened, everybody, I saw those messages coming in, and my gut reaction too wasn't, it's not just migrating up to the top of the wall there. And it just took a second to reflect on how much material was being ejected and laying on that wall for hours and hours and hours. So it was quite a sight, the first one that really came out, because it wasn't long after episode 24 concluded and everybody's still hyped up because of the episode. So I get it. It was an amazing sight to first start seeing. So here's another one over there, and this is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And shout out to the Pineapple crew, the day crew and the night crew that grabbed some of these for me. And I'm going to show off of this camera here. This is the V2 camera, I think.
Like snow, it will avalanche in the right conditions.
Right.
Kind of.
Right. Yeah, and this is real time. I didn't speed this up, so this is all happening in real time. So this shot right here is the same camera that we just saw right here. It happened again. What's that? 4 hours, 5 hours later. in this pretty much the same area. And that's what we saw over the duration of 42, 72 hours, that area, because that's the trajectory of the fountain right there.
Yeah, it was right there. That's where it's depositing. That's the biggest clue, is when you were watching the fountain rain all of this rock right into that area.
Mm-hmm. So here's off the S2 camera. This is a great shot of it.
Oh, yeah. You just see it all fall down to stir up the dust, kick up that tephra, that fresh stuff that had recently been deposited.
I believe that the last report we saw was there was about a 2-foot accumulation of tephra up on the ledge. So I'm sure that the wall was good and thick too.
All right. You can see it doing it while it's still erupting.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yep. This was after the main fountaining phase was there, and it was starting its descent or shutdown mode.
Right. Yeah, no longer the super tall fountains.
Right. It's another one over there off the S2 camera. And just shows that was the side of the wall just taking the bare brunt.
Yep. That's all it was. It's kind of cool, like after effects. You know, you thought you were done watching.
Right.
There's always a little bit extra.
So we get 6 hours of the fountaining, and we get another 24 hours of rock falls and entertainment there. So here we go. I think we're gonna go into a little bit of speed here.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish this off.
Mm-hmm.
I did see we had Phil on the back end has returned. So we'll follow this up by getting back into our summary and back onto the schedule. Yep, there you go.
There you go. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that one's really cool, that angle.
That was the shot right there.
That was the shot. That one's a good one too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for preparing that, Lou, and the Two Pineapples viewers on over here. And with that, we will see you in Community Corner, and I'll bring Phil back in. Welcome back. Internet stabilized?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. So you were on the tilt when we lost you.
All right, let's see here. Let's get everything lined back up. And we just finished the map. So here's the ground tilt for the last week on Kīlauea Summit in blue and on the rift zone in green. And the rift zone is showing no effect of the continuing summit eruption. But at the summit, we're seeing the recharge of the volcano expressed as this increase in ground tilt in a buildup phase, and then in this big deflationary drop during the actual high fountains. We can see that since that episode 25 ended, we've resumed a high rate of inflation. And so we seem likely headed toward another episode in the near future. But it's not clear yet whether that'll be an accelerated recovery like we saw in this 6-day pause between 24 and 25, or whether we'll have something more like the 9 or 10 days that preceded 24 after 23. So some variability there. And for greater reference, here's the last 3 months of ground tilt showing this relatively large pattern of ground tilt excursion with a fairly short interval compared to what we've seen before, where we've seen both large ones and short ones, but not quite in this repeated pattern that we're seeing here for 23, 24, and 25. All that said, the USGS reports in their daily update today. So the USGS daily update today reports that inflation continues, but it's too soon to make a forecast for the next episode. Otherwise, the VOG that was released from this most recent episode is largely blown offshore and moved away from the island, but continuing level emissions could affect their nearby communities and downwind areas, especially in Kau and South Kona, as you can see here. Our satellite did capture a puff of volcanic gas rising into the atmosphere, but ground level sensors show fairly limited impact on the island itself. If we look at the windy satellite view, we can see that that SO2 is up in the upper atmosphere. And that corresponds well with what we've seen from the webcams at Mauna Loa that show the gas cloud rising above 14,000 feet. And similarly from Mauna Kea as well, showing that massive outpouring of gas rising high into the sky. So that's the last episode on Kīlauea. Otherwise, the volcano is pretty quiet. Earthquake rates are fairly low still. Still active on the south flank and beneath the summit and at the Pohiki feeder zone at the hotspot. But looking at earthquakes per week for the last year, you can see here that we're in this lull that accompanies our almost 6-month eruption now. So that's Kīlauea. Mauna Loa also has a monthly update out from the USGS on June 9th. Low-level seismicity continues with about 80 earthquakes, but nothing unusual. Everything is expected in this post-eruption phase with minor inflation, with magma replenishing the reservoir system. So that's how the earthquakes plot for the last month in Mauna Loa. And earthquake counts still remain quite low per month compared to the buildup to 2022 eruption. And that's our volcano summary for this week. Okay, so let's move on to our hazard summary. And that is still the gas, and we hinted at it a little bit here with those videos from the mountains. But let's start off here showing you guys the S2 camera view for just the daytime views for all the last week. So what we're looking for is the impact of the gas. When it's blowing in this direction, that's our dominant trade winds. And you can see that the fountain that just popped through here at the end is also following that direction. That's away from people into this closed area of the national park that's back over here. So that's good whenever we see it going in that direction. It's not good when we see it reversing back to the right of the screen, but that hasn't happened in a couple months, it seems like now, largely thanks to our dominant summer trade wind pattern, but also these higher fountains seem to be punching through these lower level, stronger winds as well. So that's where the gas is flying. And a different view here, this is the K2 camera. I think it's the K. What's going on here with my cameras? All right. So let me put this on loop so we can see it again. But we can see here all the people down at the Uekahuna overlook in the foreground right here. See some of the lights of the walkway, and there's that paved viewing area. You can see that massive amount of gas pouring out of there as well. I'm just showing this so everyone can tell that even with people this close, all the material is blowing away and falling into that closed area of the park right there. So focusing on the gas and the fallout for now, we'll come back to this as a viewing opportunity later as well. And continuing on our cloud coverage here, this is a KP camera on the side of Mauna Loa looking south and has a nice clear view of this gas cloud. So let's slow this one down for you guys here a bit. And there it goes, reaches all the way off the top of the screen here before coming back down. And here's a regular trade wind level of clouds right there, right? So you see it clearly punches up through all of everything here. You can imagine all that light stuff gets injected in the atmosphere and flies away and doesn't really fall back to the ground. And all the stuff falling to the ground is all this dark stuff you see in this zone right in here predominantly. So, and then once again, the Mauna Loa camera, right, in case it wasn't quite clear, this is the zoomed in view of that camera. This is the north edge of Mokuāweo Vale, the summit caldera of Mauna Loa, and here's the south edge. So looking across the caldera, this camera is probably at 13,700 feet-ish, something like that. So very near the summit of Mauna Loa, and looking across the summit, you can see clearly above the summit, the cloud is rising. So we can see clearly above 14,000 feet, it might be 15, 16, or even more, as you can see here. And I thought it was worth, let's make sure this is slowed down too. Yeah. Show you guys the Mauna Kea view once again, because not always do we have a clear view from the side of Mauna Kea across Mauna Loa's flank to see Kīlauea there in the background. Clear enough to see it glowing at night, but also so you can see this outline of this cloud, how high it reaches up here from this further zoomed out view. And see it comes all the way up and actually starts blowing back to the east. That's that jet stream level of clouds you can see up there. So pretty fascinating how that's changing the dynamics here. And as we mentioned before, we can look at our mounts project In case you're looking at how this works, let's pick our SO2 band at high resolution, and that spits back all these images. So our most recent one, let's see here, this might have to be again UTC, the most recent day right there. There's our gas clouds. So compared to what it was before, smaller outputs. And the last one we had a larger output. It was dispersed further as well. So there you go, the 7th. We saw this snapshot last week, that initial burst that kind of hit into the upper atmosphere. And then the next frame is this one where you see it dispersing at lower concentrations after that. So like we just showed you guys, there's the windy. If you've been following for us for the last few weeks, this is a much darker color than we've seen. So it's really the last couple have really added to the mass of SO2 right above the island here. And you can see that thing gets entrained, and some of it's blowing all the way down to Southern California and Baja California as well. Looking at the VOG measurement and prediction project from University of Hawaii Manoa, that's what this forecast that we show you guys every week is. So we have a couple options here, the raw pollutant SO2 coming from the vents. It's set right here at 1,500 tons per day. That's our inter-episode average. That's what we normally get between our fountains. And even at those levels, you can see there's some effect here downwind. So that's why we worry more about that massive outpouring gas at the beginning of an episode. But if it all blows, or it doesn't get caught in these winds to blow around the ground, then that's good for people living nearby. Because as the VOG travels through the air, it reacts with the atmosphere and forms particulate aerosols of sulfate. And so those are mapped here as well. You can see affecting some of the Kona side, even with low levels of emissions. So let's keep getting our ground truth of data here, starting with the State of Hawaii Air Quality Data Site. And you can see there are a handful of monitors here are all in the green. Some of them registering higher values, but all still in green. And as we like to do, coming to our Purple Air Citizen Science Monitoring Network, which is also showing quite a lot of green here, even with a few elevated numbers. So overall, this is pretty good. Pretty low impact from this last episode overall. Last gas and air quality site is a national park website here. So we can see everything in the green there currently, with the wind blowing out of the north, everything blowing to the south-southwest. Currently 12 miles an hour, 5 meters per second there. And as we like to do, we can go back for the last 24 hours, which covers this episode. It was less than 24 hours ago here. And we can see that even during that time, everything was in the green with no elevated readings anywhere in a park where the monitors are operating. So that's our hazard summary covering the gas output here. And with that, we'll turn to some more observations. Thanks to Lute for giving us a little introduction there to some of the happenings between our last episode and, well, between 24 and 25. These are both in the past now. But to start us off here on the visuals, I wanted to share this image from the USGS. They've updated their checkerboard composite here of all the different episodes and views of the fountains. So here we are through 25 with the updated row here at the bottom, in case you're curious how each one might actually look. So we'll actually go back to 24, and the USGS has released a time lapse for episode 24, which we'll play first here as we rewind to last week and pick back up. So last week we had the north vent beginning the effusion, overflowing, high fountains coming up, south vent picking up secondarily with lower fountains after that. Much of the fallout was to the southwest, over top of the south vent and beyond, sending flows and accumulating lava in much of this southwest part of the caldera, which you see the rock actually flowing here, even as the lava channels are moving within them. And this is the area we saw a lot of that fallout where the rock slides were happening on this back wall over here that Lou pointed out for you guys, and the 2 Pineapples community as well. Mahalo to you guys. So that's 24, and the USGS has released some images accompanying that. So there's that video of episode 24. But they also released this. This is the camera on a southwest rift of Kīlauea, downwind of the vents, and in a fallout zone of tephra from episode 24 fountaining. So this is showing the barrage of class falling around a camera with the camera view knocked out of alignment here. See an interesting capture there, that one we've been checking recently, and we'll come back to this in a minute, but they're having some communication issues because of that fountain falling in the southwest as well. So there's some unforeseen impacts further out from that as well. They've also released 2 different maps based on satellite captures. These are things we've shown you before as well. Not this one yet, but where we have shown you the accumulation of tephra in a downwind direction picked up on these INSAR satellite radar scans, where they come through and scan the ground one time and then come back and scan it again and then see what's different between the 2 scans and highlight that with these colors here. So this tells you a little bit about the wind direction as well, right? So you can see it was a little bit more of a northerly wind compared to this. This was episode 23, and this one here is 24, where it was slightly more northeast. And it's more kind of fallout back over there too. So we typically have been showing you guys the Mount Project satellites. So for example, here's one of those. Here's how we normally have been pointing it out. There is that extra bit of color showing the tephra deposits, as well as lava flows where they've been moving on the surface. And unlike some previous weeks where we saw some coherent uplifts of block, now it seems like it's more chaotic, so lava covering much of the ground surface here. And even though stuff is moving, we can tell it's superimposed with flows on top of it, and it's getting pretty messy to untangle and unravel what's happening on a crater floor from this kind of image, especially. So there's our fallout maps of tephra, right? So we're having some of these with about a 1-week cycle and a 1-week capture of the satellites. We're capturing about 1 fallout cycle per scan. Pretty cool to see that. And also an updated map from June 6th. This is through episode 23, where they've noted this maximum thickness of 67 meters and lava extent with the total volume not available right there. We'll get to the volume here and after our break. They are reporting volumes for individual episodes, so we can approximate the totals by adding everything up together. So we'll come to that. In addition to some of those clips that Luke captured as far as what was happening down on the caldera floor, we have an extra activity that occurred, was it yesterday? Just yesterday, when we saw the USGS fly in on a helicopter and then land it down on a crater floor. Just as one of these overflow pulses was ending, the people climb out, stand around. I've sped up the video here for a few of these minutes. You're collecting lava samples at the front of this lava flow. Pilot comes out, says it's time to go. And they come back in. Here comes the next overflow from the vent. And the bird will then take off and do a couple rounds around. See, it buzzes over the vent. Here, circles back around. It's going to loop back in again, come close to the channel, and then swoop out again there. So pretty interesting to see that. Then we play it again one more time. I'll have to zoom it in so you can see that. I wanted to keep it out, zoomed out so you can see the scale of this. There's the helicopter right there. There's the people wearing orange flight suits and white helmets. I know it's a little pixelated and blurry there, right? But they're on the edge of this little flow right there. Back in the helicopter. Taking off. With the size of that flow coming down, right? For comparison with the helicopter. Here they go, taking off. Buzzing over. And then coming back across. And zooming in right there. Swooping away. So pretty cool to see them pop in there, time it so well between these overflow pulses, collect their sample of lava, and all of it caught in the live streams. This is the best view from the V2 camera. We also have some other catches. When we saw the helicopter fly off in this direction, we give a view from the V1 camera. So let's show you guys what that looked like. It comes in from the left up here, the helicopter. You can see that bubble of lava pond in the center there. And they're flying over, they circle around. Since it's so hard to get scale of anything in there, we're really going to milk this one for what it's worth, because it's very rare to have someone standing down in there or having a helicopter nearby, even if it's a little bit in the foreground here. It gives you a much better sense of the size of these things. And how they observe from the air. So that was our V1 flyover. And then we also had from the V3 camera, they're actually landed off screen to the right over here, where you can see the shadow of the helicopter flying as they fly up and over here. And they swing back down. So from the previous view, looked like we're right above this bubble of lava, but from this view, you can see they're actually out of frame. A little bit of a perspective shift there, but here they come, coming down, and I think they will enter the frame here in the top right momentarily, even as this overflow continues down here. Are they coming? I think they're coming. There they are, right up in there, through and out. All right, you got any comment on that, Dane? Anything you want to throw in?
I mean, David Okita, the helicopter pilot, is always just so makes it look so easy, type of thing. Just whirling that bird around and all that. So it was interesting because we were having a meeting, and then everybody, we're just like, wait, what is that on the live stream, right? And oh no, they're actually landing. So yeah, I had to clip the whole thing and watch it, and yes, good timing on their part, right? Getting in between those little pulses and everything. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty epic. I'd be surprised if there wasn't someone on the other end of the radio watching the seismometer and all the tremor and just looking at the cycles that way too, so they could give them a little extra warning. Hey, we're seeing a little more tremor and it's coming back up. Might be time to turn around, right?
Kind of reminded me of the older days when they used to send things more often, just like, yeah, we could make it happen. Let's just ride the helicopter down to the bottom and hop out and collect samples. Why not? Type. We can do this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So pretty epic to see that. Did we cover all of Lou's observations earlier? Lou, you got anything else?
All the lava falling off the wall stuff. Yeah, we did get through all of that stuff.
So nothing else.
Right,
okay.
No.
Okay, so yeah. Remember at the end of our last stream, we were talking a little bit about this area, the blowout, right, and where the lava was started to erupt, not from this main hole, but from this other hole within this north vent zone here too. So that corresponds exactly to what we're talking about at the end. With the vent can actually rearrange its shape within here, but it has to have a reason to do that. And in that case, it was all that pressure seemed to cause that, as people are calling it, the blowout right there. So that comes into play a little later when we see this refilling back, but let's rewind a little bit more and come back to just the nighttime views following episode 24. So S2 camera, you see the north vent begins glowing intermittently a couple of days later, and you see it starts flashing and the lava starts coming out here on the 10th. That's on Monday, before we have that most recent episode that was in the daytime with just a little bit of glow here at the end of the night. So I'll play it one more time. There is a little bit of that moving lava on the left with the glow coming from the north vent here in the center. Not much happening from the south vent at this point in time until the actual episode itself. All right, so that's the S2 nighttime view. And then we'll play, this is just what's going on here? This is just the full last 24 hours. So it's showing the beginning of the overflows. It's 48 hours or so, leading to the high fountains and then the actual flow itself right there. So that's the fast version. We still see this hill moving even today. The next day was from its own weight and all that well-insulated lava is still fluid and ductile underneath there. So it can still slide under its own weight there and see these stretch stretching cracks forming on the hill, and pretty fascinating. And those of you guys who know Kīlauea and Pu'upua'i can imagine how Pu'upua'i formed with very similar features as you see right here as well. So we're watching that happen in real time these months now. So coming to episode 25 in full once again. Here's our V3 camera to start, and you can see all massive fallout, and all this looks like smoke stuff is actually the dust of rock falling and powdering and causing the dust to rise up with the heat. As usual, we have the overflow channel and lava spilling onto the crater floor. You see this branch here that's heading north, and then also hits this northern wall. But what we'll see later is that the longest branch ends up moving to the south along the southern caldera wall. But in any case, lots of lava flowing across the crater floor, across these various levels of perch ponds, and spilling over. There is that dust once again hitting the upper part of the caldera wall, the lower part as well. And so there's that impact area all through there with that new hill forming, getting added to. And play it through one more time here. Small dome fountain to start. And you see a massive amount of fallout. Fountains have not been announced how high they actually are, but visually they seem to me to match the previous episode, which was actually revised up to 1,200 feet in height, or 365 meters. So that makes the previous episode, and possibly this one, if it matches it, the highest ones thus far, 1,200 feet. We'll see what the report is for the episode 25 maximum height as well. So a pretty similar pattern to the other episodes that we've seen recently here. Just let it play through here. Impressive changes, really massive changes, and we're getting a little bit spoiled by seeing them repeat so often. So that was the end of the V1 loop. So okay, this is going to be the B1 camera. So we showed you how the other angle showed that branch moving north along the caldera wall. We have a little bit of a gap in the middle, but then here is this other flow moving across the south, reaching to the east here. And we'll come back to our rocking of the before and after images of episode 25. So zoom it in so you can see some of the changes here. It's hard to see what's happening in this fume back through here, but we know there's lots of change with all the fallout, and the flow is covering this entire back corner of the crater floor back in here too. So what I can see here is it looks like to me there's a steady edge of the perch pond right there, but you see this actually covered in more overflows that seem to pave the crater floor as well. And part of that you can see here on the edge as well, the slope that's covered in some of this tephra and collapse debris from 2018 is getting unlapped. The lava is almost like the wave on a beach here, coming up onto the slope and filling it in, thickening it as well. So you can see filling that area right through there. You can look at this older patch that's got some of this sulfur discoloration on it right there, getting covered up by some of this flow too. So in this area, the flow is really quite large. It goes all the way like this, and off the screen, all the way to over here. And I see it going all the way off that way as well too. Right? So let me move the screen here and reorient ourselves. And then if you look at the edge over here, that edge of the flow comes all the way around. Keeps coming all the way to there. I'm going to pan over a little bit more and zoom it out even further. All the way coming across to almost this far eastern tip right there. So when you zoom that in, you can see this brownish rock, old rock, actually getting covered by this fresh lava here. So you can see the actual area of lava coverage is growing. There's that tip of the flow, like something like that. And back around off that way like that. Right? So that's where clearly the ground is getting covered by new lava. Beyond that, you might look at this piece of ground that's back in here. this thing right there, that thing is also wiggling upwards as I rock back and forth before and after the episode, which means the lava actually injected beneath the crust in this area and is pushing it upwards, even as it's leaking over top of it and pushing down on the side over here. So pretty fascinating to note that, and that this is one of the issues that we have to deal with when we talk about volumes. Is there's a volume of the lava that's coming out of the ground, but also the volume that's injecting underneath that you have to add together. So that can cause for a little bit of variation in numbers. Overall, fairly minor, but you can see they're pretty fascinating to see the ground wiggling up and down right through there. And beyond that, if I scroll back over in this direction, some of these features are the remains of the September 2023 fissures that were on a downdrop block. At one point, these were 60 to 80 foot high hills above the surrounding crater floor. Most of them have been completely buried. Here's one of the remains of one of these right now that you see was a little bit of rubbly from before. This lava had covered it thinly, and then as it was settling, left that rubble behind. And now we're all the way burying that tip of that thing. This one here in the middle, you can see it's just sitting still, and lava is coming up higher up on it. And some other ones, like this one over here, that one seems to actually be wiggling upwards, like the lava is injected underneath it, it's lifting it up. So that one might be the last one to get covered, since it's really kind of bobbing with the flow here, and it might get stuck at some point, but currently it still seems to be moving, whereas we're now drowning over this one, and this one seems to be the one that's going to go next. So pretty soon we'll have flat landscape on this eastern side, and no sign of that these hills were ever here at all, which is pretty amazing. The last ones are over here still, right? Some of the tephra from that eruption right in there, but that's all that's left, and all the stuff further this way is getting buried right through there. And then while we're here, and this is because this is the only view we have, and I should mention the this B1 camera seems to be having some kind of power issue. I would guess it is. It seems to be only coming online at like in the morning, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it seems to go offline once it gets dark. So it seems to be something like maybe that once the sun hits it and it can charge, but it doesn't seem to be holding a charge through the night. So we don't have any nighttime views to see how far these extents actually go, which is why we're doing this kind of exercise. So on this other branch, we talked about how there was one up here that came on a northern crater wall way over there, but there's another arm of this thing that, if you look closely, does something like this. And right in there, you can see this other arm of flow that came down as well. So lots of different branches coming across the crater floor and uplift areas. I find this area in the middle, it's got this big flat spot. Pretty fascinating. You see it clearly wiggling up and down right there too. But only in this area, you don't see that happening so much over here. So a lot of interesting localized adjustments happening there. Lava is clearly injecting underneath parts of the crust, covering other parts of the crust. And we are just trying to track it week by week without getting too far behind. So we showed this a couple weeks ago, but just to recap it, all I've done here is taken our scale of 1,000 feet and just measured how far across. I think our most recent flow probably came all the way to over in here. This right there is 7,000 feet. That's 1 1/3 miles, or 2.1 kilometers. So you're looking at about that, 1 1/3 miles, or maybe getting close to 1.5 miles, how far this lava is traveling across a crater floor. And it's hard to really gauge that because there's nothing to compare it against. It's hard to imagine how big that area actually is and how big those flows are. So that's a nice reminder for us there of that. And let's look at how people might have experienced this. So this is the camera from Volcano House from the National Park that I've enhanced and zoomed in here. So you can see what it might look like from the Volcano House terrace. So this is somewhere people could go stand on a terrace at Volcano House and see these kind of views, the fountains, lava lake, and the flows once it got dark. And as we showed before, this pretty epic view right here of people actually at Uekahuna. Maybe let's slow this down as well. Let's slow it way down here so you can appreciate and live vicariously through those guys that got caught in webcam that were able to stand right there and feel the heat and look at that massive fallout, and likely keep an eye on the wind, because if the wind changes, you gotta bail from this area pretty quick. But thankfully, summertime, very low chance of that, and everything cooperated there. So great viewing once again in the national park. That was 25. I think there's a couple final things on 25 to mention. USGS did release photos and videos of this most recent episode just today. So there is a view of that fountain, higher fountain from the north vent and smaller one from the south vent here on the right, with the array of flows fanning out across the crater floor here. At this point, noting craters, the fountains were above the crater rim, 500 feet or 150 meters tall, photo by Mike Zoller. And here with a more zoomed out view, you see the actual eruptive plume and all the dark material that's getting caught up in here and falling back down. And when it hits the ground, that's where it's creating this dust cloud coming back up. So a lot of stuff going on here. So this is from Volcano House, Mike Zoller as well. Another Volcano House view, and here you get a little bit more of this view of how high into the air this column is bursting. Once again, a view, massive rain of tephra falling out here to the left of the fountain, hitting the wall, building up that material, insulating it. We should likely see more of those kind of rock slides in the week to come. Same kind of thing happening. A photo by Heather Winslow here. And then the compilation of different views of the fountain, as we showed you before as well here. So that's most of 25. The USGS did also on Twitter or X post this recording of the fountain, which they made sure to include audio. So let me see if I can switch us here to this. Hopefully you can hear the sound of this coming through. So for those who can't quite hear it, what it sounds like a little bit and feels like a little bit is like the roar of the ocean. Kind of like one giant never-ending wave, right? In the ocean you might feel like the rumbling come and go and come and go, but there instead you just see it, you just feel it rumbling, and it just keeps rumbling, and it keeps rumbling, and it keeps rumbling. It might vary in intensity, but it never actually lulls at any point like that, right? That's a little bit of what it sounds like and what it feels like. If you get close enough, you can feel the vibrations through your body as well. So I thought I would try to share that, since we don't usually have that from USGS. And just to finally wrap up our live observations here, live view at the volcano right now, showing the sun going down, lots of degassing happening. This is that average inter-episode amount. See some birds flying through there, or white-tailed tropic birds.
I think you're still in the video.
Oh yeah, I'm still in the video. Yeah, let me switch this back. Yeah. Thank you. So let's see here. Yeah, so there's our view of the V3 camera live with some degassing, and the V2 camera as well. And finally the V1. Let's get this one live here. And there you see what it looks like presently. And we would have to guess about a week until the next episode. So we're still in the early days of the degassing phase, and we're at the point where we're looking for glow at night and seeing how close the lava is to the surface, and when is it going to start cycling up and down again and spilling over, and all that has normally taken days to transition, and a latter half of the week ramping up towards the episode. So we'll see what it turns out, what it offers us this coming week as well. And yeah, that is the visual observations. And so I'll pause there and let's go to our community corner.
All right. Well, thank you, Phil. We'll go ahead and bring Lou back in here and see you again in a minute. Hey, Lou, welcome back. Long time.
Yep.
Oh, your mic is just a little fadey.
A little fadey. How's this?
Better?
Better.
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. Phil, want to pull that off of the screen for me? Or let's see here. Which one is that?
I got you.
Thank you. Right on. All right. Let's go through the community corner, shall we? We know what's going on up there. Dane and I talked a little bit earlier on the parking and the driving into the park situation before the stream tonight. And if you are headed to the park, be patient. Dane, what was the time outside the park?
At its worst, I heard it took an hour to get from Volcano Village to the national park, which is like 3 miles down the road, something like that. So peak times of or rush hour or evening, and you get the high fountains, just expect traffic. Just expect a ton of it.
Yeah. We can't reiterate enough. If you're going to hike in, you need to bring your own water, because there are not as many water filling stations as there used to be. If you're walking in, you can stop at Volcano House and purchase some water there if they're open. So there's a look at the Waikahuna, the old Jagger Center overlook area. I kept an eye on this area during this episode because I was curious on how many people used it. And I was surprised that it wasn't as many as I thought. I know everybody heads out to Keanakekoi and Steaming Bluffs. It's both fantastic places. This is my next trip up during an episode will be my first stop. I think this is a great view right here. Check it out if you go up there. Bathrooms are still not open.
Close enough you can feel the heat.
Pretty much, right? Yeah. If you don't feel the heat, you'll definitely feel the energy. Definitely. Mm-hmm. There's a shot of what's going on when you get into the park right now. It's an MPS photo of the new roundabout area that they're working on. Be patient. Construction everywhere. But they work, and it'll definitely help when you're making that turn down a Chain of Craters Road. And there is our welcome center at KMC. If you're interested, stop by there, find out the conditions. If you're having some respiratory problems, you're concerned about the VOG, I recommend stopping in there and talking to them and get the all the information you need. There's a map of the welcome center right there. Conditions are all pretty much normal up there. Everything is open as far as I could tell today. Life on the Edge is running since the episode is over and you're here and you have a couple days left. I recommend going in there and asking for Dean and seeing when he's taking out a group several times during the day. You're definitely going to enjoy that. And Jackie has a performance going on. You may have watched some of the After Dark in the Park presentations that we've done. And this is down at the Kahuku unit. It's the Extraordinary Adventures of Isabella. It's Saturday, June 14th at 11 a.m. and it repeats again at 2 at 60 minutes. If you know Jackie Pulani Johnson and her performances, she puts a lot of time, work, education, and history into these performances. Is definitely worth checking out. I also threw down there, I had an interesting message come through at the beginning of the week, somebody asking about the hours of Kahuku unit. And we know that the main park area is open 24 hours a day, but the Kahuku unit is closed on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So I don't want you to get down there during the week and be surprised. This is a shot of the new Kapoho Four Corners to Pohiki Road. We're going to talk about this in a little bit with the what happened at the blessing on Monday and the starting of the dredging that's coming up. And I was doing a aerial flight of the beach area because we're doing some mapping of it. And when I was reviewing the footage, I caught a glimpse of the road that's going down that they're doing. And I got a confirmation that it's actually pretty drivable. It's not open yet, but they're doing a pretty good job.
I mean, it looks like it's graded in that photo.
It is.
To me.
It is.
It looks graded already. So that's
you can see in this image right here. There's a car out there. There's some potholes. That's an on the ground actual discussion I had earlier today, and there's some potholes, but they got a lot of work to do. But they've made a long road done. I guess how am I trying to say that? they've taken this a long way pretty fast. I'm
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna say it's
impressed.
only a 3-mile road, Lou.
I know, but there could have been so many things.
Figuratively, yeah.
There could have been so many things. We anticipated a lot during this whole project, right? They made it though. They're right there. So hopefully we'll have some new footage of them making the connection and have an update on that soon, on how far out they are, and connect us back together.
Yeah.
If you have not signed up for our Eruption email, we do put it out, giving a notification when the fountaining has started or an episode has begun. You can sign up here at hveri.org/subscribe. We also have a newsletter list that you can sign up for. Definitely worth checking out. And Dane, you want to take us away?
That time. Yeah. So, like to thank the Kīlauea Recovery, the Vai grant program, as well as the Puda Strong, all through the County of Hawaii and Hawaii Community Foundation, for helping support this, as well as our other programs, digital resilience and youth development. And the continued support, as well as everybody that tuned in today, the likes, subscriptions, the shares, all that stuff. No, you hear it all the time, but it definitely does help on the back end with the algorithm. So we appreciate you for being here. And if you are so inclined, we are a 501c3 community-based organization. That means we are tax deductible, and we do take donations over on hveri.org/donate, as well as in the super chats, which we did have a couple of. Where did they go? There we go. We had $5 from Dawn. This is $5 for pizza delivery to the Crystal Lake Cabin tomorrow. Got to go get it, Lou.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then $10 from Norm, just as aloha. I appreciate the continued support from both of you. All right.
We do have some up in there from our donation platform.
Ronald with a $10 donation, and mahalo to Robin as well with another with a $20 donation. And finally, Mark H came in with a $50 donation. Wow, big Mark. Thank you. And then Linda with a $10 donation. Appreciate the support there. Yeah, and I think that's everybody. Thanks everybody for donating to this, and help keep this program going. Keep the digital doors open, as I say.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
We're good here on my end. We want to go into Pohiki, bring Phil in, and then bring me back in.
Yeah, let's go ahead and queue up some Pohiki stuff, and I'll bring Phil in. That's all right. That's the drone shots you're meaning, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I will make that happen. And I'm going to bring Phil in as well. All right. Here we go.
Yeah, I think let's let Lou take this.
Okay. Welcome back, Lou. Long time.
Musical chairs. All right. Yeah, this is the blessing was on Monday for the beginning of the dredging and the Pohiki boat ramp project. And what they're going to do here, let me fly us over. You can see the hot pond right there on the bottom right. Let me go back a little bit here. And
we need Phil's drawing.
I know, right?
Basically right there, if you look at pause it on that frame.
Yeah. Back it up. There we go. So up in the middle of that screen there, you're going to see that's where they're going to start dredging, pulling all the material out so that they can put a boat ramp back in there, allow boat access to the ocean and to the ramp. And we have something special we're going to bring up here, and how we're going to watch this all unfold, and not just going down there as much as we can, because for some of us it's a drive down there. But it's an incredible project. We met the crew out there. We met all the families out there, the community support that was there. It was a large crowd, all gathered for this moment. It's probably one of the biggest things happening from the 2018 eruption that's taking place now. It's going to bring the fishing back to the community. For those that don't know, the fishermen down there, that's their livelihood. They would have to fill up their trucks with fuel down in Kalapana, drive all the way to Hilo and fish out of there. Then they would float all the way back and fish and then drive all the way home. And that round trip was a extreme toll for the fishermen and the community for Kalapana. So this is a huge event. So it was great to be part of that on Monday. It was emotional at times. You could tell that people were really concerned and care about this project down there.
Yeah, so this whole thing, you know, for anybody that's wondering what you're looking at, is the only boat ramp in Puna. This ramp was the third highest grossing boat ramp in all of the state of Hawaii, and it got spared from the eruption, but then got inundated with all the sand that you see on there. And this is sand and rock, and more rock in recent years than sand. So the plan is to take out starting at the pond that you see in front of you, 100-foot wide section, and then it gets 300 feet wide at the mouth, and then just leave it and hope for the best, really.
Right.
But yeah, as you're saying, the fishermen was really impactful for, and it just on the left there, you can see how close the lava got to the ramp. So just right around the thing, and all of everything that was lost there. And then they're starting off by digging out the beach, but also creating this area for storage for all of the material that they're going to be extracting out of that channel that they're going to be creating. It is a huge amount of material.
You can just see that with these shots that I put in here. You can just see how thick it truly is there. There's a lot of material. Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting project, and we will be keeping an eye on it. And maybe we can bring back Phil in for that.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Welcome back.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, pretty interesting to see that new road getting built. That'll connect all the way to Kapoho at some point, right? But for now, it's just a little spur to have them dump the stuff. Yeah.
No, not
further up.
Yeah, the road's coming in further up. It's on the.
Okay.
They redid that road a few years back or several years back and moved that further Malka, so that'll still be taking that. It's going to be. It's like I was thinking about it. It's almost like it was designed to be like that when you look at it from the sky, because it's like, oh, you have the road go around the area that you're creating all this storage, and then you have a road coming into the storage. It's like, no, that's just all that just
Right,
how
right.
it happened.
Yeah, I guess that's the coastal road that was sinking beneath the tide, right?
Exactly.
And they had to reroute it around. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, fascinating. Yeah. So yeah, I thought I could share this with you guys also. And this is a time lapse that we have of the construction happening down on Pohiki Beach. I don't think I just keep playing it to repeat it, but so Wednesday was a holiday, so I skipped Wednesday and I skipped the nighttime views here. But just you see what we started to do here is on this right side over here. Yeah, starting to dig out. You can see a little bit of thickness of the sand there, and maybe I can do this a little different here. Let me see if I can find my other file and put it on this other screen here to show you guys. Okay.
Yeah, so really big shout out to the Ohana down there that the red, the Hale, to give us permission to be able to host this camera, and without them we wouldn't have been able to do this thing. And the documentation of all this is important, since this is a project that really hasn't been attempted before, and we couldn't find any good examples, and the engineers and the people that are doing it, they don't have any examples of something like this happening. So we'll see how she goes.
Yeah, so it's just the start of it here, and we'll keep updating you guys with this. And at some point when we're ready to make this more public, then we will share that. But for now, we're just keeping, we're still debugging and working out our issues here, but you can see what's coming and get a little bit of a glimpse of what we're recording for you guys here coming up. So pretty exciting. That's our Pohiki update for this week. And so let's move on. Let's go to our Volcano Watch next here. And Volcano Watch this week is a little bit like our observations. It's a topic on 6 months of fountains at Halemaʻumaʻu. And a lot of this is things that we've covered usually, but I do enjoy sharing, especially the photographs and anything that's new with you guys. So here we have 2 views from this camera, this K2 camera, cropped exactly the same, showing just before the eruption began, the vents are going to be down in here below this near crater. You can't really see the bottom from here. And then afterwards, where we are currently today, June 12th. So I'll leave it a little bit like this. You can maybe compare and contrast the difference. Right, you can see there this flatter rim. You can see the road actually visible in the background through there. And then here in this next photograph, you see this growing hill truncated by the actual scallop of the crater depression itself. The road buried. And if you look closely at this area right in here, right, actually even a little higher, right here, you can see the road coming down through the tephra, and you clearly see this little slope and a flat spot. Let's see if I can get it any bigger for you guys. You can really compare that, right? So look at this, very steep walls there and clear step down right there. And when we iterate here to look at what happens in June, you can't see any of that detail in there anymore. Everything is covered in tephra, so it's not just a continuous slope. Even down in here where this was a straight cliff, you can see that all this material is gathered and stuck in this corner of the wall right all through there. So we're used to seeing this top view, but this little corner, the southwest corner, is really piling up high and almost making a giant ramp that you could potentially scramble in and out of if you were a goat, right down in there. A pretty fascinating comparison there. And a different view they've offered here is an aerial view where this top image, let's get the date, December 27th, 2024, where you can see this aerial view. There is the road coming around. This in the blue circle is a patch of trees that we call a kipuka, and that's a area of land that's older, surrounded by younger material, younger land, right? So you often get this when lava splits around a patch of forest, for example. So we had a little kipuka of trees, a little island of trees visible in this late December. And here is where the vents are located. And as the spray of lava comes up and over all this area, right, there's our little cliff. The next view down, there's our vent. Don't see any green of those trees, completely buried. The road itself is completely buried through here. This little cliff you can see is buried right there. So quite a lot of fallout. The shadow doesn't really help here, but there's quite a lot of material back through here, and we know that the USGS is interested in quantifying how much is falling back there with this recent focus on mapping it and all that, as we've heard. And this is in our comments too, if you guys are commenting and talking about that. So in the text itself here, there's quite a lot of recap. Some of the highlights: the tephra deposits extend approximately 2 miles downwind, 3.5 kilometers, with smaller fragments and pele's here much further. They note that episodes 23, 24, and 25 were some of the most impressive fountaining to date. Heights of up to 1,200 feet. We know that was 24, so we're still awaiting the final value there. The fountain heights deposited hills of tephra on the western rim of the crater. They're estimated to be well over 50 feet or 15 meters thick. They noted that during the slack wind conditions, like in earlier episodes, even with much lower fountain heights, there was impact in nearby communities. But even though we had much higher fountains recently, much of the impact is further to the southwest into the closed areas of the park. And they note that in addition to the actual viewing areas, they've also had the cameras impacted. We've lost the KW camera, we've lost the thermal camera, the F1, we've lost the laser rangefinder, and we've also lost the B2 camera because of some melting as well. Lava flow came within about 10 to 20 feet of it. So the housing melted from radiant heat from the lava, but the camera and the rest of the infrastructure, like the tripod, remain intact, and is now being used for the newest live stream camera. That's the V3. So if anyone was wondering, it's a lot of the same equipment, just a different housing that they've used on it there. And here's the newest novelty of the information here. In addition to impacting physical equipment, some of the highest lava fountains have even blocked the transmission of radio signals carrying data from remote locations to the observatory. So they've made temporary outages and are now working to resolve this by redirecting the signal paths. They're having to bounce their signals around where the fountain might possibly put stuff in the air and block their signal during an eruption. So something that you have to do if you're trying to keep your network up and running during changing conditions. So that's this week's Volcano Watch. Some interesting reflections in the last 6 months, almost 6 months now. And with that, we'll move on to our monitoring segment here. And we'll start off with our data signals this week. So here's our ground tilt for the last week, showing really just a build up to 25 and the ongoing recovery from it. Earthquakes really not noteworthy during this time. They're active at background levels, both in the shallow flank areas and in a deep hotspot source zones, mapping out in the usual locations, but not any great density. We've seen much larger clusters of ink here in the past. So our tilt for the last month, there once again, contraction at Pu'o'o, right? That's thought to be the, and it's important to note that this is a very surface level, right? There's a whole, there was a question in the chat about like, what's really causing the contraction here at Pu'o'o, but there's all kinds of things and it's hard to describe succinctly. But at the very upper level of the ground, the tops are kind of contracting, kind of falling in because nothing's pushing them out and moving them. Even as at the very bottom level, that flank is moving towards the ocean a little bit as well. So it's kind of, there's like a stack of magazines. The bottom is sliding out, but the top can be sliding in a little bit, something more or less like that. So no magma is going into the rift zone. It's just those kind of settling dynamics with nothing pushing it. That's what this green line actually is. And then a blue line, much differently, showing the effect of the magma injections between episodes, the relief of pressure in between during the episodes, and then a build up once again there. So similar pattern at Sand Hill. We'll have to have a couple of stations matching each other to confirm that everything is true data and not being affected in some way. Our last month of earthquake counts, earthquakes per day, is not very revealing either. You can see fairly normal range of 20 to 50 earthquakes per day there. Nothing unusual there. And zoomed out, we see this similar steady band of activation here, especially in the shallow zones. Deeper hollow zones are a little slower than usual, with maybe a little bit more of this clustering, but still active down there. 3-month tilt, as I mentioned during our summary here, the interesting comparison here is really this shorter interval, 6 days, right? Our average might be around 7, so just maybe slightly under average, not too far off. But we've had a couple long ones previously here that led to massive drops in tilt. And so we had a massive drop in tilt, but we actually had a fairly quick recovery. This is a much steeper line here. Right, it's similar to some of these other episodes where we saw it recovering very quickly to start. At some point, it slowed down. In our case of 25, we did not have that slowdown. It just recovered and just kept going and kept going and kept going. And so that's more similar to some of these smaller episodes. That one that didn't drop quite as far. So a little bit different pattern right here. And for all we know, just part of the regular variation that we're seeing as this eruption progresses. So, all right, earthquake counts are best seen per week over the last year. We can really see the height of activity when we had intrusions in the Middle East Rift, eruptions in the Middle East Rift, and then building up to the December onset of our current eruption, which since that happened, we've had pretty low values here. And that's really where we are. It's not really exciting, not very exciting seismically. The GPS is a little more interesting. We've noted that we're having these oscillations whenever this is mirroring a tilt. The crater is expanding in between episodes and then contracting during the episodes and expanding, and it's having a sawtooth pattern, which is fascinating. And you can see, for example, the scale of the change, like over the last week, we had something like, looks like maybe from 4, I'll call it 4 to 11, 7 or 8 centimeters of movement. So a couple inches of expansion and contraction just every single week, from the magma filling in and then bursting out and then relieving it and sagging again. So that's one fascinating aspect right there. But the other thing is actually, if we look at this envelope of where these data points are lying, that seems to be rising. It started off a little bit flatter here. This first segment's a little bit flatter through there, and then more recently it seems to be rising, which means that the distance between Uekahuna and Crater Rim is getting larger. They're getting further apart, and that's something that we in the past have seen correspond to magma accumulating beneath the surface and not able to get out quite so easily, right? So this requires a little bit further examination. And what I'll do is bring you guys to, we don't have the Uekahuna station available for us to see, but outlets up there, Byron's Ledges up there, Ahua are all summit stations that we have online here. And these are 2-year plots broken into a east-west component on top, north-south in the middle, and up-down on the bottom. The up-down is what I'm most curious about right now, because we know the crater is spreading apart. What I want to point out is ever since this eruption began in late December, we've seen the vertical component dropping in all these stations. The ground is dropping down here at the outlet. Byron's Ledge a little further east. The ground has been dropping down since December, very different from anything else we've seen over the last 2 years, right? Let's go over here to Ahua, just south of the crater outside, also dropping down ever since December, right? So even though the sides of the crater are getting further apart, they're not getting further apart and rising, which would mean too much magma building up and it can't get out. It means that magma is getting out, and at the same time, we seem to be seeing a little bit more of this. Maybe the side of the volcano on the south is moving a little further over to allow it to spread and sink at the same time. So more of fault movements and flank movement, the south flank driving the car for that particular signal, compared to the magma actually pushing things and causing everything to swell and spread apart, right? So it's spreading for different reasons. That's a little bit of a nuance in there, but for those of you guys who are here for that, that's a little bit of data we can extract from there. And our Pu'u'o station seems to have stopped transmitting recently. So maybe this is part of the data processing. You're having some issue and some extra noise in through here, but last we've seen, everything is still contracting. And our tilt meter confirms that. So there is no increased threat to people living on volcanoes rift zone for now. So that is the data streams that we'll highlight this week here. I'll scroll past these 5-year plots. And next we'll summarize the sequence of text updates that came through. So starting on June 9th, they noted the eruption was still paused, but that there was glow and spatter already occurring at that point in time. So the magma is rising in a column, getting close enough to the surface for us to see the spatter. The next morning, 7:56 a.m. on Tuesday, we have this paired set of notices from the USGS, the volcanic activity notice, and as well, which we call the VAN, and as well as the, oh, let's get this to load here, as well as the volcanic notice for aviation, which is the VONA. So the VAN and the VONA, this is, there it is, there's the VONA. So a pair of those issued together because of this threat of high fountains to aviation. So when they noted precursor activity starting in the morning of June 10th at 5:54 a.m., they, a couple hours later, issue this first VAN/VONA announcement. Later on Tuesday, a couple hours later, or a few minutes later, they issue the daily update noting the same information. And Wednesday morning, they note precursor activity is still continuing, that overflows and pistoning cycles are occurring about 5 to 10 events per hour. And that leads to a few hours later on Wednesday, I'm gonna have to reload several of these here, another pair of VAN/VONA, this one at 12:39 p.m., announcing the onset of the high fountains in episode 25, beginning 11:57, increasing markedly at 12:30. So that's the VAN. Here is the VONA. Very similar information in those pairs, so I won't bog us down with that. And then a final pair of VAN/VONA announcements here, issued at 8:30 p.m., announcing the 8:08 p.m. end of episode 25. So all that bringing us to today's most recent update that summarizes everything. We talked about how we still need more time before a forecast window can be made. But I do note here that at 12:30 p.m., the fountains were growing very quickly. By 12:45, had reached more than 500 feet or 150 meters. By 1 p.m., more than 1,000 feet or 305 meters. And that's all from the north vent before at 1:30 p.m., a smaller fountain, less than 50 meters or 165 feet high, from the south vent joins the activity here. Both vents start to decrease at 3:45 p.m. Fountain heights gradually lower. The north vent stops at 7:36 p.m. and the south vent about 30 minutes later at 8:08 p.m. So that's the end of lava coming out, but you might still see slow movement of lava or incandescence as the flows and fallout cools and solidifies over coming days here. Here is the announcement for eruptive plume reaching at least 20,000 feet above ground level by 1:30 p.m. With estimates of 50,000 to 75,000 tons per day of gas, which is why it's good that it all went too high for us to reach with our noses. And now back down to this 1,200 tons per day, but this is more what affects us. So that's our most recent update and analysis here. They note that the most recent pauses have ranged from 6 to 10 days. So that's roughly what we're looking at. And that is all the text updates, but they also have this table now, which is the eruption information and the overview section here. And you can scroll down past some of this text in a 3-month tilt plot to get to this table. And the table now has episode number, start and end time of the episode itself, how long the episode lasts. In early days, this is the full amount of time from when lava spills over to the end of fountains, but more recently it's just the start and end of fountains. The pause following the episode, approximate maximum fountain height in meters, and approximate volume of lava erupted in million cubic meters. So this is great. We've pointed this out recently and showed you guys that now they have, for every one of these 25 episodes, they have a volume and a maximum fountain height on here. Right? Everything is filled out, especially these right side bits of information are things we had not seen before. So coming here to the bottom where we are presently, 25, 8 hours of fountaining, our pause is ongoing, maximum fountain heights to be determined. But we do have a volume of 5.3 million cubic meters. Here's where that comes from. And in comparison, the last one was 5, before that was 4.6, before that was 3.6. So it's been climbing a little bit here. And that also matches the climbing fountain heights from 275 meters to 350 to 365. That's our 1,200 foot record keeper right now, and then are to be determined for that coming up here. So from all this data, I thought we could compile some stuff for you guys, but to set it up, just to recap, here is one of these maps that we get. This one does not have a volume available, but oftentimes they do report a total volume of lava as well as thicknesses and acreage and all of that too. So putting it all together, I want to show you guys this graph right here. So what we have here is on the bottom is every single episode, right? And what I have is these yellow bars are individually what each episode erupts in million cubic meters. If you can see, if I were to zoom into that part of it, every one of those little stripes is 5. So there's like 10 million cubic meters, and then 5, and then 16, and then 7, and 1, and 1, and so on and so forth there, right? And you can see as far as the volume, there has been some variation. Since about episode 20, you can see it's been gradually slightly increasing here, right? But there have been some cycles of it coming up and down and up and down and up and down. So we'll see how long this current increase lasts. Otherwise, what we have is the cumulative volume gained raw. So the red line is I've just taken each of those numbers and just added these numbers together. And what's our total volume over time? The red dots are when they issue a map and they say, here's a number altogether, everything thus far. So the red dots are lined up and they do match they match a little bit, but there is a discrepancy here where you see sometimes you see the map saying one thing, but the number is saying something else. So just for the sake of seeing what the error might be, I've added this blue line, and the blue line is reset to match the map. Every time the map is issued, let's just call that ground truth and reset our line. And so even with that, you can see the blue and red lines end up being almost on top of each other at this scale. Pretty steady growth of lava accumulating in the crater here. And I don't have the graph for the filling rates quite yet, but in case you're wondering this question that we've talked about in the last few weeks, it would take years of this activity happening for us to fill anything sizable, whether it's in our crater or beyond that, more months to more years to spill over on a caldera floor, or more months or years to spill out of the crater, all those things. So not very specific there, but just the ballpark, months to years is, especially at the slower rate, where it goes off once a week, right? Not continually every single day. So here's something else that's interesting. Days from the onset. So each dot is one episode here, progressively from 1 to 25 left to right. And the actual volume preliminarily, so I'm kind of zooming in on those gray bars. So you can see the first 3 episodes had higher volumes. We're having this greater variation of volumes. And then since then, we've been pretty well within this zone with no clear pattern, right? You can see maybe there's this up and down and up and down and up and down, but you really can't predict anything from that or say that there's not more volume coming out over time. There's not less volume coming out over time. There's some variation happening. That's neither of those things, apart from that first burst was different from the rest of it. So that's the volumes. Let's look at discharge rate similarly. So what I've done now is similar days from onset, but our preliminary average discharge rate. So to get this, what I've done is taken the episode duration, so the start and end time of the high fountains in particular, and the volume they give us, and just divide it and just say, okay, that much volume came out in this much time. So this is the average discharge rate preliminarily. What we're not doing here that they might do in other studies is take out the component of how much is gas compared to what they would call the dense rock equivalent, right? The gas-free version of that. So what you can see overall is, apart from the variation at the very start, you see actually a rising trend where the further into this eruption we get, we're getting higher and higher on average discharge rates. So here we are, the most recent 3 being the 3 highest ones. You see some variation recently, within a range, right? But that's kind of how that lays out. And so for comparison, I thought I would pull out this image. This is Special Information Report 2018 about the pool eruption. right? This is something we've shown before. And so from the Pu'o'o data, here's what that looks like. In their case, they have dense rock equivalent volume. They have theirs corrected, unlike what we have, but so it's maybe a little bit better data. But here's ours, days from the beginning of the eruption. And you can see they also have things fairly within a tight band and not a whole lot of up or down, but maybe some variations. Hard to tell what's going on with those variations in the middle of there, right? But this is not that different from what we saw right there, right? This is Kīlauea 2024-2025, and this is Pu'o'o from 83 to 86 about. So what else does Pu'o'o have to show us here? Average discharge rate, cubic meters per second. Once again, they've corrected theirs, unlike ours. But what you can see the pattern, once again, days from the beginning of the eruption, over time, the rate of lava coming out goes up as well. So that's Pu'o'o right there. And to show you guys once again, here is Kīlauea 2024-25, pretty similar pattern. So it seems to be following those patterns that we see, right? And so the system's getting pretty mature compared to these two, right? You can see at the Pu'o'o, maybe you would see that after this initial ramp up phase, it comes to a point where it seems to start petering off again, right? So when it starts dropping off, maybe that's a sign that things are changing. So something to look for in the future here. Right, so a few more graphs to catch things up here. So on the left, we have in red the duration of high fountains, and the orange is how much time there was since the first flow spilled over. So that precursory activity marked by the first overflow, right? So here we are with our 8-hour fountaining phase, similar to the ones we had in the past. And there's another 8. That one was closer to 6. That one was closer to 10. But you see fairly close range in there. There's our precursory activity with about a day plus of time since the first overflows to the onset of fountains. That was a little different from 24, but similar to 23 and similar to all the other ones we've had since about episode 12, where we've had the shift to the staggered buildup with precursory activity coming first and then the fountains staggering sometime afterwards. So that's what that looks like. And in blue here is the pause in between episodes. I've just stacked the same red and orange here. So our most recent pause of 6 days was shorter than the last two, but close to the average that we've seen over time. On a shorter end, you can see then many of our pauses we've had, right, since the system was more mature here around 7 or 8. So, and we're waiting what comes after 25. So that's how that looks presently here too. While we don't have the maximum heights reported for 25, I've just plotted them on here as being the same as 24. We'll see if that holds to be true or not. But visually, it looks fairly similar. In any case, we know there are at least 1,000, so they're similar in this range right in there. And that tells us that you can see here that maximum fountain heights have grown. You can see almost 2 pulses. This pulse that grows up to episode 16. 17 was a really funny looking one where it didn't have high fountains and it still put out a lot of lava, but without as much of the gas content shooting it up in the air. And then since then, we see we've been ramping back up again and have reached some pretty incredible heights here, 1,200 feet maximum height being our newest record here. Okay, one more, and that's our average discharge rate, how much is coming out compared to the maximum fountain height, right? So if the fountains are very high, what does that mean for how much lava is coming out? And I hope you can see here, apart from episode 1, which is the funny one, the pattern of all the other ones is about the same as well. You do have some outliers, 15 and 16, that came before our funny 17 were a little bit off. But overall, you see that the higher the fountain, the higher the discharge rate as well, right? So that's a good proxy of how much lava is coming out when it's shooting in the air super high and spraying all over the place. There's a lot of lava coming out. Might seem obvious to state that, but this is how you back it up with data, right? The total amount of lava coming out is not changing, right? So that's how come the eruption episodes are getting shorter as well, right? So higher rates, same amount of lava coming out. Yeah, that's how you get that. So one final thing here, I know we're doing a little extra today, but one final thing along this line of thought and on this paper from referring to the the pool era from 1983 to 1986. There's one last thing I want to cover here before I take my leave of absence in case something happens in the next few weeks, so people can know what to look for. And that's this feature called jetting events here. All right, so I'll try to summarize this. During the final hours of the final episodes, a new type of behavior was seen, with 1 to 4 brief jetting events occurring during the last 2 hours of each episode. I'm going to skip some of this other detail, that's not as important. Each event lasts 1 to 2 minutes and consists of several pulses of magma-poor, gas-rich fountains that in the case of Pu'o reached as high as 550 meters, so extra high, going above what the fountains normally reach, creating enormous black tephra columns, as they point to figure 18. Here's figure 18. So I'm gonna have to just describe it. You can see what that actually looks like. You see the red maybe to somewhere in here, and this thin little spray of lava, and mostly you see black material, and it's rising much, much higher into the sky than the lava itself. Right, so let me skip ahead here to them explaining what this might actually be. Let's finish describing it here first. Jetting fountains were accompanied by a loud hissing noise and followed by a brief period when the gas and tephra plume was so dense that it obscured the red part of the fountain, the glowing part of the fountain. After each jetting event, the fountain died for a few minutes and then slowly recovered to its former pre-jetting height as a broad, smooth-looking fountain, like a more typical view. Jetting pulses were separated by 31 to 53 minutes. Tremor dropped following jetting and picked up again before the next one. So they noted that there was one case prior in a sequence at Pu'o, was episode 12, that produced a long-lasting jet of gas, possibly steamed with entrained tephra. They feel like possibly there could have been groundwater nearby the conduit. They have seen in the past that there is shallow enough water there that it could get involved. And if that's what's happening, they don't know why it only happened during episode 12 and during the last episodes 42 to 47. They note that the rainfall pattern was not unusual. So maybe because the jetting events are occurring only in the dying stages of each fountain, the waning stages of each fountain, maybe that water can get in there during those times somehow. I'm not sure I'm convinced by that personally. But they do put another option in here as well. They note that during Mauna Ulu's eruption, there was a similar ash-heavy plume, and it was thought to be caused by fragmented crust being ejected by a pulsating gas jet. So what they're saying is the fountain is dying, the lava pond that's been the fountain is erupting through is slowing enough to form bits of crust, and as the bulk of lava is replaced by a big slug of gas, all that lava material can maybe peel off the vent walls and fall into the magma column, triggering resiculation and providing material that can readily get caught up in a resulting jet. So they did not find that material in the field following that, but it might be hard to pick that apart. So there's some different ideas of how that might happen or why it might happen, but honestly, they don't really know. Still, what we do know is that when you start seeing this kind of thing happening, then you're getting close to the end episodes, if Pu'o is any guide. right? They had that happen episode 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47 ended up being the last one. So it wasn't the very they saw it and it was the very end of it. It was the beginning of the end of it, and that was one of the signs they saw. This is one of the few things we have not talked about because it has not come up yet, and I'm not sure that it will come up. But just in case, we all know what to look for now from that. So that'll do for our monitoring data here. And just very quickly, just to show you guys the earthquake map. Here is the earthquake map for the last week, colored by depth. Let's see what's going on with our data over here. All right, so we have in blues our deep earthquakes. So there's our hotspot feeder zone. And it looks like it's actually today clustering to 3 different clouds, one on the side of Kīlauea, maybe that's the part feeding Kīlauea, one towards Mauna Loa, feeding Mauna Loa, and one towards Kameahua Kanaloa, formerly known as Lo'ihi Volcano Seamount offshore here. So there's a hotspot feeding lava, magma into these systems. It might come as far as Kīlauea under here, maybe cause some deep earthquakes in the source of Kīlauea down there as well, and also to Mauna Loa, there's a deep one underneath it as well over here too. The other blue earthquakes that we see on the map further afield are more of these settling earthquakes, deep under the island as the weight and everything above it shifts. So that's normal part of the background there. And if we look at the yellows and reds, we just see a few events on Mauna Loa, normal for the background as well. Maybe slightly more here on the east side. So perhaps some adjustment of Mauna Loa with Kīlauea becoming more important here. And otherwise, there's our Kīlauea summit cluster and south flank population as well. So nothing too exciting there. We do like to come to our last 7 days of earthquakes on this view of the map and just point out what the largest events were. So 3.9 down here on that offshore Pahala cluster. 3.6 was offshore of Kona, deep settling event. 3.4 deep under Kīlauea. 2.8 deep Pahala feeding Kīlauea. That one offshore to the north, offshore to the southeast, and then we're down into the lower magnitudes there. So that wraps up the activity, which is just largely a background event and just waiting to see what else happens here as adjustments occur on Kīlauea and Mauna Loa. So, okay, I think that wraps us up here for the week. We can see how much time we have for some discussion and questions, Dane.
Yeah, I do know that our ASL team has mentioned that they need to head out. So, Dano, if you got to go at any point, we appreciate you guys for being here. And yeah, just get that out of the way so you can dip out at any point. All right, so we do have some questions for you. Pick out a few of them here. We did also have a $5 donation. Want to shout out from Raven. Thank you for your amazing work. Appreciate it there. They did have a question. Question is calling at me going back to the fountain height graph. Seeing the fountains gradually get higher, is that an indication of something big incoming?
No, not necessarily. That's something we saw at Pu'o'o as well. It just seems to be a more efficient system in some way, right? So I think that when we're seeing, some things seem to be fairly constant and then some things vary, right? So we imagine the magma input into the volcano is somewhat constant. We do know there are variations for sure. The fact that each episode is putting out about 5 million cubic meters on average, that seems to be interesting to me. So like that's about the threshold of pressure it needs to relieve every time. And it's not letting out more volume, not largely so. You know, even though we have seen it increasing a little bit here for the last 3 episodes, it hasn't gone off the graph or anything like that. So that's a great question, Raven. I'm not sure. Let's pull that graph back up here. If I can find it. Mountain heights here, yeah. So yeah, I don't think that's so much something big incoming necessarily. It's more just the efficiency of the system to start. Maybe I can find the Pu'o'o. Yeah, here is the Pu'o'o fountain heights for comparison. Make it big enough so you can see. You can see it too grew up to a certain height, then stabilized, and then came down slightly, and then that's how it ended as well. And so we're just showing you guys that we're still in this healthy middle part, right? We're not seeing any of this decrease in heights yet, decrease in flux, any of the things that might be the wind down phase signs that Pu'o'o showed.
All right. We've got another question here from over on Facebook. Chris asks, why is the tilt decreasing at Pu'o? I assume that no new lava is flowing into the East Rift Zone. Is existing lava below it in place in last year or prior intrusions moving on the rift? Is it cooling causing contraction, a combination of these two?
Right. So that's a question I was referring to earlier that we talked about, is stack magazines.
Sorry.
That the top part of it maybe is moving together, contracting, even though the bottom part's sliding away as the flank is moving. And yeah, no magma going into there, so there is some contraction. I don't know how much volume you lose just from contraction alone, so I think you have to have some of the settling going on as well. But the GPS stations are right on a surface, and that stack is moving separately and differently at different depths as well. So that's the confusing part of it too.
Right.
But yeah, that's what we expect to see there. So sometimes we see it actually reverse its contraction, and that can be just by some local effect, whether it's a little shift of the ground near that station, or sometimes we see the rainfall coming way down the ground and cause a little bit of an extra variation as well. So when you see those kind of signals, it's showing you that it is contraction, but it's also really zoomed in. So we're kind of analyzing some really small wiggles in the grand scheme of things, right? And ultimately, when you're looking for tilt changes that are significant, you're looking like 5-10 microradian scale. So none of this little stuff would qualify.
All right.
Yeah, good question.
One more question. If it keeps fountain like this every week or so, how long will it take to refill the caldera or at least the crater?
Months to years.
Months to years, right?
Months to years, yeah. I don't have a good graphic for that yet, but we stepped through that kind of simulation a couple episodes ago. And
right.
Yeah, it all depends on the rates and how long they sustain. And looking at this, that's really the question, right? It doesn't just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger for forever. At some point it stabilizes, and at some point it decreases. So that's hard to predict when that's going to happen, how long it'll take, and that's where you have a large variation. So most likely year. Yeah, the inner crater, maybe you could get it in months if you accelerate and don't come
by
to
the end of the year, maybe
plateau by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But more likely you're looking at years more realistically it's years, right? Because all that assumes nothing changes, and we know things change every single time.
That's been the most amazing thing about this eruption, and it kind of reminds me of 2018 with the collapses, and it's being very predictable. And that's not a usual thing for Kīlauea, is when you're sitting there making like these super granular predictions with some level of accuracy. Usually it's like, I'm going to make a prediction that I'm going to be wildly wrong type of thing. So you don't make, bombastic predictions because it loves to curveball you. This one, it's been pretty straightforward type of thing.
Yeah, we've been at that kind of equilibrium, kind of happy place, right? Where whatever is coming into the volcano is able to be coming out of the volcano as well. So I think of it, it's almost like a seesaw, right? Where it's just right on that edge and just right on a balance back and forth. And so, yeah, that makes it pretty predictable if it's going to stay that way until the fulcrum moves or something, then the whole pattern changes, of course. So,
right.
But we don't see any sign of that happening. And yeah, any instant a big earthquake could change things, but there doesn't seem to be any reason for that to happen. Although, as we talked about last week when we were having a similar discussion about the vent geometries and all of that, sometimes some localized pressure right around the vent mouth can cause like a blowout or something. Rearrange that actual nozzle things.
What you were saying though, about what it might look like when it ends, right? Looking at the historical record. So you have the jets, which is new, like to me, like the endings having some kind of jetting to it, gas jetting, but also the when the tilt doesn't rebound immediately, that's also might be that indicator that the cycle's over. The party's done. Don't show up next week type of thing and expect it to be going, or something along those lines.
Yeah. All the old rules and patterns are out the windows. Just start looking with fresh eyes at some point, right? So right now it's pretty predictable, and that's part of why I feel a little calm even though I'm going to take my leave here for the next few weeks, and I'm sure you guys will be just fine with probably that's 3 episodes in 3 weeks. I'm gonna guess.
If I would have told you years ago, like, hey Phil, you're gonna take a vacation, you're gonna take some time away, and there's three separate events with 1,000-foot fountains. You'd be like, oh my god, what am I? It must be crazy, but it's like, no, we've just got used to it.
It is crazy, right? It's just like, you gotta stop and take a breath sometime, and it's been 6 months, so we'll keep doing that.
All right, well, we're coming up on 2 hours here, and we have lost our ASL interpretation team, and we appreciate them for carrying Dano for coming in, and welcome back for them. And we will give you a welcome back soon enough.
Right, so me personally, I'll be back the second week of July. But every week the show will go on. So got everyone tuned back into Lou and Dane, and if I can submit any contributions of anything unusual, then I'll try to do so. But no promises. But
send all your clips of the lava doing weird stuff when there's nothing happening. Those are good.
I think it's pretty interesting, and we've seen a lot of different stuff happening with Eruption, a lot of different fascinating things here. I mean, the most interesting thing to me is how high this back corner is growing. Look at how tall that rim is up there. That matches the height back over this wall. It's like there's almost like have this giant horseshoe now building.
And see
back there, right?
Lou and I were asking questions like, is it sleddable? Like, could you get a sled and go down the tephra all the way to the bottom, and then maybe have a winch and pull you back up on the sled out of there? But then they took a helicopter in there and just ruined all of our games.
The helicopter seems safer to me than sliding down that really hot tephra. It's like moving.
But it fun.
Like you wedge yourself into a crack, and suddenly like you're inside lava, or whatever part of you is in the crack. You know what I mean? Like, so that's no good.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks there, Phil. And Lou and I will take the helm, and I'm sure we'll have not sure, but as close to as you can get with this thing. We'll be doing this dance at least one more time, and probably until you get back would be my guess. The question is do the fountains continue to be 1,000+ feet? So we've seen that fluctuate, and they've been consistently big recently. So see if that changes, or if they just get bigger.
All right. Thank you, Dane. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, all you guys who've been watching us here to the end of our 2 hours. I see we still have at least 80 people tuned in. Mahalo to all you guys. And until next week, we're a nonprofit Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. For Lou Atori and Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong. Until next week, aloha everybody.